And I think the one thing that we've really been trying to figure out is how are we going to engage these kids? If you're anything like me, you have been through a huge amount of training, whether it's on Flipgrid or Zoom or whatever modality, whatever programming that you're using. We have been trained out the yin yang right now for how to use technology to reach our students. But one of the things that I think we're all still searching for as music educators, it's not how to deliver content, right? It's not necessarily how to figure out the right program and how to grade. I think the thing that we're all still searching for is how do we engage our students musically? How do we get them inspired? How do we keep them fired up? And if there's anything that is missing, I believe that that is what is missing. And that's what I want to discuss today, ways that we can musically engage our students, not only through what we're doing as teachers, but as an ensemble, getting them to work together, getting them to feel that sense of community that they so desperately need. I think there's no question that despite the fact that some people question the validity of music, especially in a time right now, there are kids that need music more now than ever. There are kids who in music, in your ensemble, that might be the only time that they kind of feel normal. And so we want to continue to open that world of possibility to them. Well, when we talk about a world of possibility, there's a great book. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend that you read it. It's called The Art of Possibility by Roseman, Zander, and Benjamin Zander. Of course, Ben Zander is a conductor up in the New England area, the Boston Philharmonic Orchestra, conducts all over the world, and his wife, Roseman, is a psychologist. And so they come up with this book about possibility. And there's this great way of thinking about things. But in order for us to think about it, I think we have to start off by thinking about the way, this world of measurement that we live in, right? What does it mean to be in a world of measurement? Basically, it means to look at everything through just one lens and kind of embrace the bad, for lack of a better word. Well, what is the bad? Well, first of all, we are pretty much, even if you are fortunate to be somebody who is back in person, you are likely going to have smaller classes. You are likely to be in a hybrid modality. And of course, many of us are in completely virtual modalities. Those of us that are back in school may be dealing with unusual groupings. I've heard from several directors whose ensembles are made up by alphabetical order last name. So likely you're not going to be getting any kind of balance, right? You might wind up with 4 bass clarinets one day and an oboe, right? How do you make that work? And then this idea of overall uncertainty, right? Just the constant not knowing what's coming up. And I think all of this can have a very negative effect on music. And so what I want to address is what we address in that book, Art of Possibility. And that is that we all carry what's called a framework of assumptions around with us, right? We assume that this is just the way it is, right? And there's nothing we can do about it. However, if you change the frame, new possibilities emerge. If you're looking at a picture and all you can see is one thing, change the frame, maybe widen the frame. So it's not just on that picture, but maybe it's on some elements that are surrounding the picture. Change the frame and new possibilities emerge. So how do we change the frame in this particular situation? Well, here's the first thing that we have to look at. We do not teach band and orchestra. What in the world do I mean by that? We don't. We do not teach band and orchestra. That is a very important thing to think about. So what do? We teach music. We teach music. Band and orchestra are one modality, right? Band and orchestra are one vehicle that we use to teach music. But at the end of the day, we are not teaching kids how to be band and how to be orchestra. We're teaching them how to be musicians. And if we start to change the framework, then everything can start to change about how we can address being music teachers during this time of uncertainty. Let it be known that, of course, the importance of large ensembles can never, ever be overstated, and I will continue to do everything in my power to advocate for them. However, right now we have to recognize that we do have immediate solutions, not temporary solutions, but immediate solutions. And it's important to note that these have long-term implications. What do I mean by that? I mean long-term positive implications. I firmly believe that some of the things that are coming out of this pandemic will be long-term things that will never go away. And they will be positive, and they will make it better for all of us. And so I think we need to be able to embrace those things and look at it with a positive, exciting eye of possibility. I want to talk about solutions, not only to instrumentation, because those are things that we're all facing right now, and we will be facing those for years to come. Size of ensemble, whether you're in school, whether you are remote. The challenge we are all faced with right now is this ever-changing landscape. If you're anything like we are here in Maryland, the goalposts keep moving. Sometimes you kick the ball and then they move the goalposts while it's in the air. And it seems almost impossible at times to come up with a curriculum, to come up with a way to challenge and engage our kids when all of that is happening. In order to do all of that, I believe very strongly that we need to reimagine our ensembles. And what do I mean by reimagining ensembles? Well, we certainly need to be looking at small ensemble music, and we need to be looking at flexible instrumentation. And we're going to talk a little bit about the different types of flexible instrumentation, whether it's semi-flex or full flex, because I think that is extremely important. Talking about opportunities to harness the creativity of the students, right? This is a time where we can engage the kids on a creative level that we have never engaged them before, maybe because we just haven't had the time. And if there's one thing that this pandemic has given us, it is the gift of time. I talk about it all the time. Everywhere I go, I talk about how so often we're just running, right? We're running from one gig to the next. We're constantly running from class to class, from home to school, from school to home to marching band to competition, competition to festival, and we never have a chance to breathe. We finally have a chance to breathe, reevaluate, and use this time to engage on a level that we have never engaged before. Thus enabling our students to be inspired not only in rehearsal at school, but also at home, and to be able to engage kids through connected learning. Notice that I'm calling it connected learning. I would love to take credit for that, but I can't. It's my son's school that came up with that. They actually called it Connect Ed, but here's the rationale for it, right? Instead of calling it virtual learning or distance learning, right? The terms virtual, distance, online school, all of those things support the idea of being far away from each other. So when we talk about distance learning, we are promoting the idea that we are not connected. And if anything, what we want to be doing is connecting our kids together. And so they use the term Connect Ed with the ED in capital, and then I love it. So if you steal it, certainly steal it, but don't give me credit for it because I stole it too, all right? But I do want to talk about all of those things. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is the Reimagine initiative. And this is going to be a gateway into a whole bunch of repertoire that we're going to look at, but not only that, but a whole lot of ideas. And to be clear, this is not going to be a product session whatsoever. This is also not going to be a listening reading session of any type, although we are going to listen and look at things as examples. So the Reimagine initiative was something that was born out of the Creative Repertoire initiative. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but it is an idea of, can we come up with something that is playable by any combination of instruments, something that will enable us to teach far beyond just performance and make it functional across multiple learning environments. And the music that we are going to look at throughout this session is going to be music that has adaptable parts. Now, we are going to be looking mostly at what we are calling fully adaptable, full flex. What fully adaptable means is that every single player will be able to look at any part. So we're going to be looking at 3- and 4-part flex ensembles where everybody will have access to all 4 parts. And I'll get into that in a minute. We're also going to be looking at alternate parts, where you'll see alternate parts provided for instruments that might struggle to play in unison with other instruments, such as tenor, sax, and horn. Having accompaniments available so that if kids are at home, they can record themselves to an accompaniment track, whether or not it is in a popular assessment software like Music First or Smart Music or any of those that are out there. Having multiple percussion options so that we can engage kids on multiple levels. And again, looking at teaching opportunities far beyond performance. How are we going to engage these kids beyond performance? Because if you are anything like me, anytime I do an honor band, anytime I do an honor orchestra, I always tell the kids that for me, it is not about the performance. Matter of fact, I have a love-hate relationship with performance because, I love the performance because it gives us a chance to show everybody who we are and what we do and the journey that we've been on. But I hate the performance because as soon as I give a downbeat, the second that downbeat happens, every downbeat that I do after that is one step closer to us being done and leaving and going off into our separate areas. And the concert is not what defines us. A concert is not what will stick with us for years to come. It's the journey. And so again, reimagining what's possible and changing the framework to make it more about the journey and less about the concert. All right. And then just reimagining opportunities in general for musicians. Those are all things that I want to talk about. We're going to talk about 3- and 4-part versions of large ensemble works. And again, all instruments will have access to all parts. Basically transposing each instrument with octave adjustments made where necessary. Now, the first comment that I typically will get, and this is where we have to change our framework of assumption. People are going to say to me, they're going to say, wait a minute, you're going to give a tuba or a double bass all 4 parts of a flexible piece, of an adaptable piece? It's going to sound awful. And so they assume you must not be doing that for the tuba and the double bass. And the answer is absolutely we want to do that. Why? Well, there are a lot of scenarios where we are going to want to engage them. How beautiful would it be if you can have open, let's say you are in a in-person modality, but you have a random sorting of instruments. You have a bass clarinet, a double bass, a tuba, a flute, and a trumpet. How great would it be if you could have everybody pull up part 1 and learn part 1 together, talking about phrasing, talk about where the dynamics are, talking about the articulation, talking about rhythms, and every single person is looking at the same thing. When we think about positives that are going to come out of this, I believe with all my heart that we have a possibility here that really within the next year, it is very possible that all of the low reed players, all of the low string players, especially double basses, and again, looking at tubas, looking at bass clarinets, that technically we could wind up with the most technically able low voices than we have ever had, because for the first time they are giving the opportunity, they have the opportunity to look at and learn all the same parts that the flutes and the clarinets and the saxophones and the trumpets and the violins and the viola, they're loving the same opportunities to learn. And so it is highly possible that we are going to wind up in a whole new world of technique for the lower instruments. And I'm very excited about that. In addition to all of that, we are trying to look at music that has accompaniments. And some of the FJH pieces that I'll be showing you in the Reimagine initiative have accompaniment tracks. But then again, in the CRI, Creative Repertoire Initiative, that I'll speak about in a minute as well, we are trying to provide accompaniment tracks. Whether it's an easy piano part that you can play along as a director if you're in school, chords included where you might have a guitar player in your class, because again, it's just a hybrid of everybody and anybody. Or maybe you're a piano player that just plays basic chords, that's fine. And then making an MP3 download available for kids that want to play at home, right? Lots of options. We want to talk about opportunities far beyond performance, because as I said earlier, we are not just focusing on performance. We want to make sure that we are giving kids chances to make orchestration decisions. How does that work? Well, let's say that you go into class and we have everybody with all 4 parts. How cool would it be if they can choose who is going to play what part? And you know what's going to happen, right? Maybe some kid is going to say, hey, let's have bass clarinets on part 1 and flutes on part 2 and saxophones and double basses on part 3. And they'll make some kind of crazy choices. And maybe you'll play one of these choices and maybe it'll sound terrible. Maybe it will. But then you also know what's going to happen. Some trumpet player, because you know it's always the trumpet player, is going to say something like, all right, I know, let's put flute and tuba on line 1, and let's put clarinet on line 2, and let's put bass clarinet on, and they're going to pick some interesting combination, but then you guys are going to start to play it, and it's going to sound amazing, unexpectedly amazing. Imagine what it would be like if there is a sense of spontaneity where kids are excited to come into your rehearsals every day because they have no idea what the orchestration is going to be for that day. They have no idea which part they're going to be playing that day. They have no idea what they are going to artistically going to be able to achieve as a result of not your decisions, but their decisions. Again, we are opening up a whole world of possibility that has been closed to us before this pandemic, and we want to harness that. What about flipping your band? What about putting all of your tubas on the flute part, all of your flutes on the bass line, or all of your violins on the bass line and all of your basses on the violin line? Maybe you will not ultimately perform it that way. Maybe if you're going to do a virtual ensemble, maybe you're not going to do it that way ultimately. But how much better will your students know a piece of music if you haven't just talked about the other parts around them and told them to listen? We always say, everybody, make sure you're listening. What if they have experienced all the parts around them? How much better will a tuba player be able to play the bass line if they know, because they've played the melodic line? How much better will they be able to play the bass line? Will they be able to phrase the bass line, right? How much better will a violin be able to play their melodic line, or a viola play their counter line, when they've been playing the bass line and they understand what's going on with the harmonic changes in the bass line, so they know where to put the inflection, where to kind of peak the phrase in response to the bass line? It creates a whole nother level of awareness throughout your ensemble, right? So you can just flip the ensemble completely. What about sight reading? We now have the possibility of reading the same piece 3 or 4 different times, and every time your group is sight reading it because you changed the part assignments, right? You can read the same piece 4 times. And when we talk about teaching opportunities far beyond performance, not only are we talking about now, but imagine what it's going to be like when we get back, right? When we get back into full ensemble music, what it would be like to be able to harness some of these reimagined pieces, right? Some of these full ensemble flex pieces where you're able to work on the small, fully adaptable music alongside of the full ensemble, so that maybe all of your woodwinds are playing in a woodwind chamber ensemble and they're learning the piece. Maybe your brass players are learning the piece. Maybe you have a low brass version that's learning the piece, and a high brass and they're learning the piece. And maybe your upper woodwinds and your lower woodwinds. You can divide this into so many options where they're able to learn the piece on a much more rich level. And then when you bring them back into the full ensemble, imagine how much more amazing it will be. You've heard me talk about the Creative Repertoire Initiative. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of it, but if you haven't, CRI is a group of collective composers and conductors, which was put together basically for the idea of creating adaptable music and inspiring others to do the same. So it's not just about the composers in CRI, but we were committed to try to create a wave, right? A wave of composers to create repertoire so that you have an endless supply of curriculum available to you. Who's in this group? Robert Ambrose is kind of our fearless leader, I like to call him. He is at Georgia State University, conductor there, band director of bands, and it's amazing. The composers, most of these composers need no introduction. Myself, you may have heard of me, Stephen Bryant, Michael Doherty, Julie Giroux, Jennifer Jolly, who I love her to death, John Mackey, Peter Meakin, Alex Shapiro, which I'll speak about more later as well, Frank DeKelly, Omar Thomas, and Eric Whitaker. These sessions for me became therapy sessions during a time when I felt like I had no identity. When this pandemic hit and I felt kind of like I don't know who I am right now, these people and these discussions really helped me realize who I am and what I could be. So who are we? What are we? We consider ourselves a think tank. We're trying to explore different kinds of compositional approaches, which I'm going to be sharing with you, including adaptable music scoring, which I've been talking about, improvisation, elements of chants, and music with electronics. We're going to get into some really cool stuff towards the end of this session with things that you can do for your kids, especially if you're not sure what's going to be happening next semester. Lots of really cool options. Right? We're also trying to inspire and guide and amplify the voices of other composers. And that's why I'm going to be sharing with you a lot of different composers today. And I'll give you some resources that you can look at. As a matter of fact, let's jump into those resources right now. Make sure that you take a chance to write this down, but it's very easy to find. You can find our website at creativerepertoire.com. To be honest, that is simply a gateway to our Facebook group. Everything is on the Facebook group. That is where the cool kids are going. And that's Creative Repertoire Initiative. To be clear, there is a Creative Repertoire Initiative page, but that just leads you to the group. You want to be on the group. And composers there almost daily have been posting their new music. It's available for all different kinds of modalities and instrumentations, and I highly advise you to check it out. All right, so a lot of things to talk about there. I want to jump into actual repertoire because I think that's where it starts to get really, really fun. All right, so let me, there we go. I want to talk a little bit about Blue Ridge Reel. A lot of you know this piece because it's one of my very popular band pieces and strings. This is going to now be available to you. And yes, it will be in a string-friendly key. So ignore everything you're about to see because there is a string-friendly key available for you. So let's look at the instrumentation here, right? You can see it's the Reimagined initiative. You can see all the adaptable parts. In this case, it's 4 parts for every instrument. You will notice that there is an alto clef part. That does give you the chance, if you have a full orchestra, they can perform this piece, right? Although there will be other full orchestra options down the road on this session that will work even better. You can see the alternate parts, the accompaniment part and percussion. Right? I'm going to dive right into the music. You will see there's a million things that are here that you can use. Opportunities teaching, again, beyond performance, reimagining the musicians' opportunities, and then recommended part assignments for either traditional or non-traditional ensemble makeups. All right, so here you have the score layout. You will notice that parts 1 through 3 are in treble clef, part 4 is in bass clef. That is indicating that in a perfect world, the 3 parts, 1, 2, 3, will be sort of upper level, not upper level, but upper register parts to some degree. And then part 4 is designed to be more of a bass line, okay? Some of you that may know the original version of this, I'll play you just the original, a little bit of the band version. Okay, so that's a little bit of the original version of this. Now, my first question was, can we make this work not only as a flex ensemble, but can we make it work for virtually any ensemble? And so what was I thinking about? You know, Frank DeKelly and I were kind of trying to tackle the same problem at the same time, and we did it in different ways, but this came up with the same answer. What I wanted to know is not only will this work for, you know, again, a typical flex type of ensemble, but what happens if you've got a kid that plays trumpet at home and they're all by themselves at home, but they want to be able to realize the entire piece? Could this work for 4 trumpets alone? And so what will happen is when you see that 4th part for trumpet, obviously it won't be in bass clef, it'll be in treble clef, and yes, it will be up the octave, but it still will work within an ensemble setting. So what I did was, a good friend of mine, Jose Sabah with the Boston Brass, decided, I asked him if he would take a look at this, and he decided to record it for me. And so I want you to hear what this sounds like with just trumpets, nothing else but trumpets. And then you're going to hear him playing along with the accompaniment track, which is available for free to every student. And all that piano accompaniment, all that accompaniment track is the piano and then the percussion. Everything else is just trumpet. So take a look at what this sounds like. You can see it really sounds. I'm gonna skip towards the end a little bit. So really fun, right? Really fun. And to me, it works quite well, actually, right? I think it works just fine. And this is now giving us an opportunity to not only experience this in school with any instrumentation. I don't care if you have 3 oboes and 1 bass oboe, right? Or 3 oboes and a flute, or 2 flutes, a bass clarinet, and a tuba. It'll work with anything, all right? And you can either have them play just live on their own, or you can have them play with the accompaniment track, which you'll hear right here. And what this is going to do is, this is a great opportunity by playing with these accompaniment tracks, right? They're playing with a metronome, and they're playing with a pitch reference. It's working on intonation and time, right? And then strings, you heard me mention it to you, but yes, it is available for strings, and it is transposed up a step. It's transposed up even more. It's up in the key of G, transposed to the key of A. This was actually supposed to get played at Midwest this year before, unfortunately, it was canceled. So hopefully next year. To get a little bit of an idea of that as well. Speaking of strings, we wanted to kind of go another step further because, as we know, band and strings do not function very well in the same key together. And so we wanted to make sure that there was music available for strings as well. And so look at Viking by Soon Hee. You'll notice the slightly different format here. And one of the reasons for the different format is because, for example, if you look at measure 5, you'll see that violins, right, double stops for them. That's easy, right? No big deal at all. But those same double stops do not work for cello and bass, and optionally, possibly not for viola, unless you have a more advanced player. And so Soon Hee decided to orchestrate it out in a different way to maximize the capability of every instrument. So again, if you only have 4 violins, you can do the piece. If you only have 4 violas or 2 violas, a bass, and a cello, you can do it with any instrumentation at all. You know, and one of the things that I look at when I think about, when I think about the possibilities going forward of all of these things, I think about what a great way to extend, when we're in full ensembles again, what a great way to extend these into chamber ensembles. If kids want to go to solo ensemble festival and play as small ensembles, to be able to expand, right, as an extension of what we're doing in school, to be able to have them do chamber music on the outside. So a lot of great options. All right, and then one other option here, let me just jump ahead here to the finale from Serenade for strings. Again, it sounds really full, even though only 4-part writing. Skip forward just a little bit. And I'll skip a little more. I'm impatient. You can tell I'm a trumpet player because I always want to skip to the fast part. Okay, so you get a little bit of an idea of that as well. So a lot of things going on there as well. So let me go to the next piece that I want to jump to. All right, and that is John Mackey. And so I want to indicate and kind of show you guys that there still is great music to be made, even with small ensembles. This is what we would call a semi-flex, meaning that you need to have that D line, right? That is a concrete bass line. However, I did speak to John, and I believe he has now released an accompaniment recording that has the D line and the drum set together, which means that now it's become a fully flexed piece again. All right, check it out. A little bit of this. Let me be frank with you. The reason for the title, John got writer's block, right? He kind of got frozen during this whole thing during the pandemic and couldn't write anything. And then he got really excited when he started to be able to write again, until he felt like the piece that he was really excited about was a ripoff of Frank DeKelly. Turns out it wasn't, but he was so convinced that it was that he decided to call it Let Me Be Frank With You. So a lot of really fun stuff there as well, right? So that gives you a wonderful opportunity for that. I'm just kind of scrolling through to let you see a little bit of that. I also want to show you a little bit of Omar Thomas's Sharp 9. Again, 5 parts written here. You'll notice that part 5 is always doubled in the piano left hand, and he's got some accompaniment tracks there that are available for you. And part 4 also very often is covering the harmonic implications of part 5. So even though while it's not perfectly all the time, it's very much designed to work in a lot of different options. And there's improvisation options here as well. And there's a ton of materials here for historical reference, analysis, listening examples. He's done an amazing job on this as well. So really cool stuff there as well. Now, you heard me mention much earlier that we also wanted to give kids an unparalleled access to creativity. And this is a piece that does that. Some of you may recall the Terry Riley in C that he wrote in the 60s that was all based on cells. And there is no score. As a matter of fact, this is the score and the part. There is no score to this. This is available for strings and for band in slightly different keys, again, to be as approachable with both, although you can easily pick one key or the other key and do it with a full orchestra as well. Unlike the Terry Riley in C, one thing that I decided to do, just to give it a little bit more structure, was to create different sections. And so you will notice here that you can have as many kids or as few kids as you want to start off on cell 1, and they can repeat it as many times as they want to before advancing to cell 2. Some of them, if they want to, could jump into cell 4 or 5, or even cell 7 or 9, wherever they want to go. And then they can jump backward. They can really do anything they want to within section 1 to keep it interesting. What that's going to wind up meaning is that kids are going to control the rate of development of the piece. They get to control how fast it will develop, and they get to control whether or not there will be, whether or not there will be any foreshadowing, right? They're going to be hinting at things to come, or whether that's not going to happen at all. Younger players that might not be quite ready to play everything might only play cell 8 over and over again. until you give the conductor cue, and then the conductor cue would have them all jump into section 2 together. And that goes through 5 sections. I'll play you just a little bit of this one. Some people may be coming in on cell 1 for the first time right now. Some people might be jumping ahead to cell 9 already. And then the conductor gives a cue. Now we're in section 2. So I'm going to jump ahead, and then we go to section 3. I'm going to jump quite a bit further ahead here. And again, this piece is going to sound different every single time. So that piece will sound completely different every single time that you do it. And again, I think it's pretty exciting for that reason. I want to share with you a piece by Jennifer Jolly. This is one of the few pieces that I know of that is actually performable live over a Zoom or Google Meets connection. It literally will work that way, and I think it's awesome. And it's not a gimmick thing. She actually wrote this piece long before this was a situation with the pandemic, years before. And what you're going to notice is that this is again very aleatoric. Everything is based on certain scales, and then you're going to see that there are rhythmic patterns that they can choose that are associated with those scales. There are 2 parts, and they basically choose which of these parts they're going to be playing. And you'll notice that as it goes through, the registers get higher and higher, okay, going all the way through. This piece can be an indeterminate length. The recording that I have is over 12 minutes long. It could be just 3 minutes long, depending on how quickly they go through. The recording that I have is of a clarinet ensemble that premiered the piece. And of course, you can do it with any instrumentation. I'll let you hear just a little bit of it. Right now, you're hearing a little bit of a combination of 1 and 2. So 1 and 2. And jump forward just a little bit. The thing I think is amazing about this is that you would expect it to sound extraordinarily dissonant, incredibly contemporary, but there's quite a few beautiful moments in here. Go on a little bit. So again, this is a piece that can be done entirely over Zoom if you want to do it that way. A lot of great options here. Now, we're going to get into a different section here, but I want to talk about a few things. So one of the things that I want to talk about here is a piece by Alex Shapiro called Passages. And this is going to lead us into a whole nother world that's going to make things available for you in the fall. So Alex wrote this piece, and it's based on a background track. I'll let you hear just a little bit of this. So imagine what we were talking about with my arithmetic, where they get to choose their unique voice. Very similar here. You can begin playing any line. And it's designed to work with any combination of those lines. And she has a series of game rules involved, right? And you'll notice that some of these are varying different difficulty. So some of these will work for much younger players, and some of these lines are better for slightly more mature players or ambitious players. So there's that option. Well, that led into something completely different and exciting. And that is a little matrix music. If you're interested in learning more about this, you can go to Alex's website or my website. I'm just brianbalmages.com, and she's alexshapiro.org. And if you want to specifically learn about this, you can go to brianbalmages.com/matrix music. What this is designed, it's based on a syllabus that was created by Alex after she met with Timothy Salzman at University of Washington, when he was like, we're completely hybrid and I don't know what to do, in last spring when everybody was completely at home. And she wrote a curriculum that was based on kids collaborating together, and it was amazing. What she was doing was absolutely amazing. Kids started to improvise, they started to record their own ideas, they started to collaborate with each other, they started to alter those ideas, coming up with mixes, doing all these different things. Let me just share with you one example of a young ensemble that sent me a recording of what they started doing with a little matrix music, just to hear. And then I'll go into a little bit of detail, not only about what you can do with this piece, but what you can do with Alex's curriculum. This is a tuba player that picked one of the melodies or realized from the earlier motifs that you were seeing. This kid played and mixed. Here's a friend of his. Taking what was written and kind of changing it, adding embellishment. And they're adding some harmonic changes on their own. So you get the idea, right? And they've done a lot of different things with that. So what you're going to notice with this piece is we have this foundation. This is available actually when you get it. It's in B flat and D. There are two versions. You get both. So you can choose which key you want to work in. But everybody is giving these rhythmic cells that they can work with. They're given motifs. They are given these different melodies and different things that they can do there. And in addition to that, they're given counter melodies. And those counter melodies are based off of the melodies, which are based off of the motifs. So it really teaches them a lot about the composition. We have elements to add color and dissonance. And then for more advanced players, we give them the option of creating or improvising their own music. And I don't care if they're going to create the music or improvise the music. That doesn't bother me at all. I'd like to share with you quickly a video done by a director who did this, and just kind of did a quick 5-minute introductory video on how his kids are able to use this. And I'd like to share that with you right now.
So here are a couple of ideas to help you get started on a little matrix music. Here's the drone. And I'm going to open up the metronome, and I'm going to tap the tempo that I'm hearing in my head, which is a little slower than what's written here. I'm just tapping this in time, and it turns out that it's 63 beats per minute. That's fine. So it wants me to adjust the audio, and I'm going to say no, don't adjust. Just change the tempo, leave the drone by itself. So now my tempo is slower, and I'm going to let the drone play out till about measure 4. Maybe there. So right at this point, the drone gets a little interesting. It has this high shimmer to it, and I think I'm going to start my first percussion cell there. And I'm going to play Percussion Cell 3, or Rhythmic Cell 3. I have a drum here, but you could use anything. You could use a bucket. You could use, be creative. I'm also going to hit it with a stylus. So here I go. got the cell all recorded, and I'm going to listen back to it, and I'm probably going to play with it. I'm definitely going to double click it, and I'm going to pitch it down. So when I click here, I'm going to pitch shift this whole thing down an octave. That's 12 semitones. There. Now let's hear it. Much better. Maybe I'll try playing it in reverse. So now it's this. I like that a lot. It's a little loud, so I'm going to turn it down. And I'm also going to put a ton of reverb on it. Let's go to Effects and add an effect. Let's turn the mix of the reverb up, and let's listen to what that sounds like. That's interesting. So maybe I'll turn some of the high frequency dampening down. I'll expand the stereo width. Just play with the knobs. They're fun. That's pretty cool. With the drone, it sounds like this. And I can repeat it. Let's say it repeats twice. So you get the idea. Now, I'm going to add a melody part. I'm going to add one of the motifs. So I'll go to Add Track, and I do play guitar, so I'm going to add a guitar track. And I'm going to let that, the first rhythm cell, play, and then I'm going to start recording my guitar part right here. And for this, I'm going to play motif number 8 on the sheet. Here's my guitar sound. Looks pretty good. Here we go. So now I have both of those parts together. So I could repeat that as well. Let's just tighten it up a little bit so it's right on the end of the measure. There. And I could repeat that as well. And as before, I could add effect to it. But in this case, I think what I'm going to do is pan that guitar all the way over to the right to make some space for the next recording. I could, of course, add some effect to it. Maybe a delay. Make it interesting. Be creative and have fun with this.
Okay, so we are back, and I am going to kind of on the same idea here with this matrix music. I also want to share with you an example from Alex Shapiro. Now, with Alex, one of the things that we were doing was she came up with this original curriculum, as I had mentioned to you once before, where she was encouraging kids to improvise, to go through all these different concepts. And so what we wound up doing was at Towson University, where I teach, we wound up pairing these students into sound teams. And again, this is something that you can do if you get her curriculum. It is available for free, by the way, the curriculum. There's no charge for this curriculum at all. And then if you want, you can purchase the drones from her. But basically, we divided these kids into sound teams, and I want you to hear a little bit of what they came up with. We asked them to record 15-second long just excerpts of them playing around the key of A flat, right? And so this is Allie, and she came up with something on clarinet. You can listen for a second. So you get a little bit of the idea there. We had the quintessential trumpet player who wasn't really sure what to do. You can even hear the crickets of birds. I can't remember what it is in the background. Right? Of course, total trumpet player, right? So that was marked angry, right? That was all marked angry. Here's another one of the same sound group. You get the idea of that. Okay, we have another angry. Okay, just giving you a little bit of a little idea here as to what they're doing. Okay, flute player just did something very simple. Right, so you get the idea, right? Now, what we encouraged them to do was then to start to collaborate over the course of a period of time where they started to use each other's ideas and mix them into their own new sounds, right? And create what we were calling sonic quilts. I want you to hear the result of one of these things. And the beauty of this is that this project is these kids are collaborating, right? They're meeting together. They're discussing whether they want a certain tempo or whether they want it to be completely open. They're talking about the mood. Are they trying to make something angry or happy or frustrated? Where are they going with that? And they're collaborating, and then they're recording themselves, which is an incredible skill for these kids to learn. And then they're learning to mix. They're learning the process. They're learning a little bit about DAW, digital audio workstation. Whether it's something like GarageBand or Audacity or BandLab or Soundtrap, we have access to so many of these. And these kids are learning a lot of these things on their own. What you're hearing right now will be completely just using GarageBand, nothing paid at all. And I'll kind of walk you through a little bit of this. So you can already hear that one, the euphonium part, they dropped it down the octave. Now we've got the original and that one echoing each other. Somebody added a fifth on top of themselves. Now, here's something really cool. I got to pause for a minute. There was a horn player. I didn't play this for you, but there was a horn player that played this line. And what this person did, which I thought was really cool, they took the horn player and they phased them. So they actually put about 6 or 7 tracks of the horn player in there and put them off by about a second each. And then as it went on, they started to transpose it higher and higher. And then if you remember, there was that multiphonics, that right? They added that underneath of it, and listen to what the resulting sound was. After that, you are going to hear the saxophone, but it is going to be highly processed with some kind of overdrive sound. And then you're going to hear that trumpet coming in with a little bit, not with a little bit, a lot of reverb. All right, check this out. Lots of distortion here. Remember the clarinet? They added a third below her. So you get a little bit of an idea, right? There's so many options there. I think that's one of the things that I'm most excited about right now is this possibility of being able to do so much, even in a virtual environment. And so I encourage you to try this and check it out. Kids get really excited. They start off very timid, but by the time they get into it, it's like, it's hard to get them off, right? It's hard to get them to stop doing it. Before I leave you, it is really important that we acknowledge something, because I think sometimes we come to these sessions looking for answers, but sometimes when we come across somebody who seems to have so many thoughts and they're so excited and so much enthusiasm, it's very easy to question our own drive and think, well, why are they so enthusiastic? Why do they have all these great ideas? And why am I not able to do any of that? Why do I feel so paralyzed? And it's very easy to get down on ourselves. And I want to publicly acknowledge that while, yes, I've done a lot of things, there are days where my success story is, I got out of bed today. And that's the reality of it, right? And so we all struggle, and we have to embrace the bad days and the good. The thing I want to leave you with is, as I said earlier, this pandemic has given us the gift of time. And I absolutely respect and love that. And I ask myself over and over again, what was I doing? How was I teaching? What were the things that I wish I could have taken back before the pandemic began? And now I've got this gift of time to address those things so that when this pandemic is over, because the one thing we know in the world of uncertainty, one thing we know for sure is that it will be over. It will end. Who do I want to be on the other side of that? And use this time now to make sure that when we do get to the other side of that, you are ready to inspire on a whole new level. But don't save it for after. Let's start doing it now. Thank you guys so much. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your conference and a wonderful day.